Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Gregory had no time to second-guess himself. He was already through the doors, encased in darkness. They stopped. The crashing noises stopped the moment that he entered, replaced by a deathly silence. Gregory strained his ears, skin pulled taut over his body. The sound did not return. He stayed frozen at the door, adjusting to the dim light, all of his instincts wanting him to bolt in the other direction. The more that he saw, the more his fear built. It was, as mentioned, a raceway, and it was huge. The whole thing appeared to be retaining the same Western theme from outside. An entire miniature town was set up, dusty roofs and wooden doors hiding shadows behind their empty windows. He could see places labeled to be the bank, the shop, the jail. Sand piled up on every corner, parched grasses and thickets clumping together around every wall. Painted on the backdrop was more of the same desert landscape, prickly pears and tumbleweeds thriving below a dry yellow sky. There was even an archway in front of it all, labeling the fake town as Gator's Oasis. Sure enough, in the middle of all the buildings was a huge pond full of dark, rippling water. Fake alligators poked their long heads out of the black water, filters disguised as ducks bobbing along in the current. The oasis was uneven, some larger parts connecting through rivers, mixing into the town itself. A bell tower stuck out at the top of a huge mound-shaped island in the middle of the main pond, designed to keep track of the raceway's rounds rather than the time, the rusty hands of the clock's face still for now. Silhouettes stood everywhere, making his flesh crawl even as he recognized them to be fake townspeople in cowboy hats. Pink gossamer beetles hung down from the ceiling, probably acting as lamps during the day. But now they were doing nothing, the place dead and gray. The raceway began at a checkerboard starting point, shooting off into twists and turns of the surrounding town. The path sometimes moved in and out of the buildings, obstacles of cacti and rattlesnakes forcing the players to slow down. As his eyes traced the path, he realized what Freddy's last words had meant. At many points in the course, the pond was close enough that someone hiding below could lunge up and block the racers. Though he nervously imagined the giant metal alligator slamming its jaws closed around a child's head, he knew that, from hearing other kids talk about this place, Monty only jumped up to scare them and slow them down. At least during the day. But now... As he took in the shadow-dried scenery, his limbs pulled closer and closer to himself, sweat trickling down his back. It was quiet. Totally quiet. His breath heaved much too loud against the silence, his heartbeat doing the same, thudding loud enough to give him away. It felt like he'd thrown a stone into a lake and was now watching the ripples cast out from that point, everything in the whole world turning to see what had disturbed their peace. Someone was watching him, angry at him. Gregory closed his eyes, trying to back up from it all. He had to survive. He had to get out. He was the only one who knew about James. He took in several deep breaths. He hated how much the noise scraped against the silence, like a metal fork on a glass plate. Come on. He began to lean back into the aggression that he had felt and lost and found, trying to find strength again. He had taken down Chica and Roxy already. He could do this. He had to. Finally, summoning up his courage, he continued. He stayed alert, eyes open, ears open. He zipped his gaze back and forth, stopping every few meters, listening. Nothing lunged out from the thickets, no sudden splashes to the oasis. Nothing but hatred boiled in the air. Gregory approached the starting line, sweeping his gaze over the different race cars set out for him. They were all lined up in neat rows, 5 in total. Each one was designed differently, left on the settings that they'd been on during the day, taking on the appearance of rusty wagons. Their colors were lost to the moonlight, making them all look like broken-down vehicles in a scrapyard. All of them, though, were squat and low to the ground. Fake wooden wheels lined the outside corners, while the real wheels hunkered beneath the plastic coverings. The insides of the rusty cars were padded like a roller coaster, with an entire U-shaped beam that came down over the shoulders, seat belts tangling on the seat in front of a large steering wheel. Gregory found the controls beside the starting line, on a pedestal where an employee would keep track of the game. He made his way over there, standing on his tiptoes to see the labels, squinting to read them. The panel was covered in a series of buttons and levers, enough of them named to calm him a bit. He put his finger on the start button, braced himself, and pushed it. The world exploded into noise, obliterating the slumbering silence. "Welcome to Monty's Raceway!" A careless robotic voice shouted over the loudspeaker. "Are you ready to rumble?" Gregory jammed his fingers into the volume control, bringing the loud announcer down to the lowest setting, silencing him. Gregory pressed himself down beneath the panel, his heart trying to claw its way out of his throat. He waited. He listened. Nobody came to ask what was happening, or even question what he was doing here. Gregory straightened up, peeking around the panel. He was still alone. Shaking out his tingling fingers, Gregory stepped down from the panel, the robotic voice calling on the lowest volume. "Racers, please select your card and prepare to..." Gregory was too far to hear it anymore, out on the sandy track with the starting line. He eyed each of the different carts, picking the one at the front. It was difficult to see what colors it really was, but he was pretty sure that it was orange and blue, now dulled by the night. He glanced around again, dragging his gaze carefully over every surface. Shadows as thick as tar draped behind every fake house, hiding so much from him. A plastic rattlesnake was staring right at him, yellow eyes focused and sharp. Gregory climbed into the cart, eyes still on his surroundings. Immediately, he felt heaviness dragging down at him, wanting to curl up and fall asleep right here. He pushed that away, putting on the seatbelt, fumbling a bit with the straps. His fingers were all shaky and uncoordinated, causing frustration to build, only making it worse. After several attempts, Gregory managed to clip it on. He reached up and snapped the U-shaped beam down onto his shoulders. It squeezed him tightly into place, locking him inside. Gregory waited, looked around at the dusty town. Nobody cared that he was here, apparently. 3 lights at the top of the starting point arch flashed above him. Red, yellow, and then green. A click unlocked the wheels from the stationary position, but even then, he didn't rush to start. He waited a few more moments before carefully pressing his non-injured foot down onto the pedal labeled Go. The cart began to roll forwards, slow at first before he gained more confidence. It wasn't very loud, but its noises still cracked the silence apart, the rumbling and squeaking and rattling setting every hair on end. He gripped the wheel, sweat gathering beneath his arms, eyes flicking about. The shadow-infested town stared back at him, the black water of the oasis lapping quietly at the edges, its surface flickering with distorted reflections of the full moon. The sounds of the car hit the quietness in the face again and again, but still, nothing reacted. He slowly guided the cart through the designated path, a straight shot to a large building that looked to be a shop for boots and cowboy hats and jeans. Gregory slowed down as he entered the store. It was almost pitch black in there, the only sign that the rest of the course existed being the exit point several meters in front of him. Intricately designed leather boots lined up on the shelves, a staff bot at the counter nearly giving him a heart attack before he realized that it was a prop for the scenery. Dry air tightened around him, the sound of his cart's wheels echoing back loudly from the walls. He got to the end of the building, coming to a stop, the sounds of the cart ceasing. The exit opened up innocently to him, the gray desert waiting. Bracing himself, Gregory stomped down on the gas. The cart reared forward excitedly, a burst of noise coming with it, the wind throwing his hair back. Nothing lunged down to grab him. He tried to relax, tapping his fingers on the wheel. Maybe Monty wasn't here. He'd love to pretend that it would be that easy, but he knew better. The quiet path circled around one of the ponds splitting off from the oasis, leading into a maze of cacti as obstacles. The pond was close. So close now, enough to... He circled the oasis with rattles and rumbles, watching the rippling water. It looked like ink in this state. Couldn't see the bottom. There wasn't a slight incline of a riverbank around the edge. It just looked like a shaft of darkness that cut down through the ground, the depths immeasurable. Something moved in the water. Gregory's stomach clenched painfully, foot pressing harder on the gas, cart growing way too loud. He shot forward, nearly crashing into the first cactus. When he corrected himself and drove around the first obstacle, he took a moment to glance back. Nothing had changed. Gregory rubbed his sticking eyes, trying to blink away the blariness in them. Focus. He had to focus. He kept a suspicious glare at the cacti. Little white spines rippled over the thick skin, glinting wickedly in the moonlight. However, the base of each one was surrounded in padded cushions disguised as dry grass. Even if he did crash, it wouldn't be that bad. Because of that, he kept his eyes off the road, still scanning around, listening. He left the cacti behind without problems. Paranoia poked at him for being out in the open like this again. The path ahead twisted back and forth, moving through several more buildings. Again, there is an oasis shortcut available, but he firmly ignored it, going around. He slowed down at every shop, peeking at the oasis over his shoulder as he passed up a clay well. The empty raceway stared back at him blankly. It had such a cold, empty feeling to it, with nobody here. He hadn't even come here before, and he still knew that this wasn't right. There were supposed to be parents cheering in the empty stands on his left and right, groups of kids laughing and racing against each other, having the time of their lives. And here he was, an invader, slowly rolling the noisy cart along, trying his best not to fall asleep. He wanted Freddy back. His wrist still stung with the bruises where Vanessa had crushed the Fazwatch. He was entirely alone here, with nobody to... A splash. Gregory screeched to a halt, jerking his head up. The stupid harness didn't let him look around very far, cutting off half of his view. The sound had come from somewhere behind him. He kicked the gas, rushing forward, taking another bend, crossing the finish line. A little ping went off whenever he crossed the barrier, a small screen beside his steering wheel lighting up. It had empty meters for all 5 of the cars, tracking the progress of the race. His meter filled with 1 bar. 5 more spaces to go. He slowed to a stop at the first small pond, anxiety knotting up tight in his gut. He was so sure that he had heard something. No matter how tired he wasn't stupid enough to think that it was his imagination. Gregory couldn't do anything about it, though. He just kept on driving, keeping as far away from the water as possible. He went through the cacti, around the bends, keeping away from the various ponds. He slowed at the shop entrance, taking another quick glance around. He went through, the echoes of his vehicle clacking back to him, walls closing in. Another splash. He slammed to a stop. This was it. He was done. Back to Freddy it was. Okay, no, nope, no, I am not doing this. I am not... He muttered, grabbing the rubbery harness that had clamped around him, trying to lift it off. It wouldn't budge. His heart began to beat against his chest, harder, wanting to escape as bad as he did. He pushed and twisted around, trying to leverage himself to lift the harness off, sweat trickling down his face to his neck. He gave up, leaning back with a gasp, fingernails still digging into the harness. He stared up at a beetle globe. It spun around cheerfully above him, taunting him. Okay, he said. This is fine. This is okay. It makes sense the harness wouldn't unlock until the end of the race. He just had to hurry. Now. Gregory forgot the idea of escaping, knowing that he was locked in for the long haul. He put his hands back on the wheel and shot out of the store, head pivoting around, insides full of worms. Something had changed since he entered the store. Gregory rushed around the last few bends, pulling up to the finish line, slowing down as he neared the other carts. They had all been lined up neatly, ready for use. But there were less. He swore there were less this time. Gregory looked down at the meters, gauging everyone's progress. There were 5 meters, 1 for each cart, not including his own. He counted the other carts. There were only 3 left. Gregory snapped his head back and forth, the harness blocking him from craning his neck very far, searching with all of the limited visibility he had. The 2 missing carts were nowhere to be found. Again, he started pulling at the harness. It didn't give, not even a little. Gregory sped across the finish line, the second bar filling up with the same ping. His shoulders were locked up and cramping, each bone in his shoulder scraping against its neighbor. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his stomach clenched so tightly he felt like he might puke again. And still, the gray desert did nothing. The rattlesnakes were stilled, the tumbleweeds untouched, the fake alligator staring blankly at him. It was empty. A giant, empty raceway, gaping open like a monstrous cavern. Gregory tried to bring Freddy's voice back as he entered the cacti again, hating every scraping movement his cart made against the road as he puttered along. A splash came earlier this time. He hadn't even left the cacti yet. He rolled along, the empty nothingness of the world yawning out all around him. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet, the next time that he crossed the finish line, there were only 2 cars. Ping. 3rd lap. He pressed his eyes closed, then glared determinedly at the road, teeth clenching hard enough into each other that he felt like they would crack. Just keep going, just keep going. He moved through the cacti, around the next pond, rolling around the bend, aiming for a wooden building. He was just entering the low passage when the next splash came. He didn't stop. He just kept on going. Freddy, think of Freddy. Pretend Freddy is here with you. He exited the passages, creeping along, ducking his head low. The only movement was the dangling beetles, twirling around carelessly above him. Rows and rows of empty chairs watched him as he passed, the stands full of silence. Complete and total silence. He approached the finish line. There was 1 car. Ping. 4th lap. Think of Freddy. Think of Freddy. Gregory drove into a large arc around the oasis, a battle of instincts raging in his head. Part of him wanted to freeze in place, while the other part wanted him to speed on through just to get it over with, neither of them making a good case for themselves. He ducked around the cacti patch again, made it down to the next bend, passing the clay well's dented bucket. He watched the black pond the entire time. The surface rippled lazily, lapping with little slaps at the edges of the deadly pits. But below the surface, the depths of it were completely concealed in darkness. Anything could be waiting there, watching him. He swore that he saw movement, but it could have been the flickering of the water against the moonlight. He moved through a shop. The last splash came. When he made it to the finish line, he was the only car left. Ping. He wasn't going to make it. He still had 2 laps to go, 5th and then 6th. The next splash was coming for him any minute now. He kept on going, fingers hurting, legs hurting, stomach hurting. He was lightheaded with the silencing, oppressive fog that had descended on him, dampening the space beneath his arms and along his back, making his matted hair stick to the back of his neck. All the while, panic raked its way up his throat, urging for him to scream for help. Freddy wasn't coming for him. Nobody was. The empty raceway was all that he had. Gregory rolled along, a lost deer separated from the herd. He kept to the outer edge of the path, away from the oasis. The air conditioner tickled the beetles, the humming of the air vent keeping them fluttering about. It was almost peaceful. He crept out of the shadows of the cacti again. His heart spasmed in his chest harder and harder, waiting. This last splash didn't come yet. He kept on going. The U-shaped harness compressed into his collarbone, clutching him much too tight, sticking to his sweaty skin. It was too hot beneath the harness, but it didn't let him move an inch. He snuck into a wooden building, slowing to a stop once he made it to the exit, creeping up on the light. Gregory listened past the rumbling engine. There was nothing but the gentle lapping of the oasis water and the hum of the vents. The next pond was right outside the shop's exit, outlined with a golden star that looked almost like a giant belt buckle. He pressed the gas pedal, leaning out, holding his breath. He left the shop, watching the water. Something moved. He kicked the gas pedal harder, speeding out of range. No splash. Not yet. He was on the last bend now, the finish line dangling in reach. This lap's splash was coming soon. He could feel it. He was done. It was over. Gregory said his prayers, gathering himself, and leaned harder into the gas pedal. He accidentally clanged against one of the grass barriers, bouncing off, the harness keeping him snug. Still, nothing happened. He drove faster, faster, the finish line right there. 10 meters, 5, 1. Gregory passed the finish line. Another ping. His meter filled up another bar, 5 out of 6. He still had 1 lap to go. Gregory grimaced, waiting for his doom. He rolled on through the path. Any second now. It didn't. It wasn't going to. The splash hadn't come that lap. He didn't dare to feel relieved. A break in the pattern was not a good sign. Only one more, he told himself, nearing the cacti patch for the last time. 1 more lap, and he was out of here. The stands watched him in silence. He passed the cacti, went through the shops, came out and crept along the edge of the oasis. No splashes. The empty cavern echoed with the rumbling of his engine, the rattling of his wheels, the roaring of his heartbeat. He went through the twists and turns. He rounded a corner with the clay well, entering the second building, one full of fake cowskins. He slowed down in the narrow space, not daring to leave it yet. Peering out of the exit, he could see the finish line waiting for him. And right there, beside the last stretch, was the largest section of the oasis, offering a shortcut. Gregory closed his eyes, squeezing the steering wheel, testing to see if the harness would come off. It still didn't. He swallowed, taking in several deep breaths. On an exhale, he stepped on the pedal. He was thrown into the open by the wooden building, the pink beetle spinning, watching him from above. The oasis's water sloshed along the edge, only a meter away. He was almost there, almost. Gregory couldn't breathe. He just kept on going, speeding up, the unbearable prickling spreading all over his skin in a wave of goosebumps. Still, the raceway was silent, empty. Almost there. He was in the last 10 meters, the finish line taking its sweet time. Closer, closer, 5 meters, 3, 2, 1. He rolled across the finish line for the 6th and final time. No splash this time either. The only noise was the ping, followed by a celebration noise from this nearly muted loudspeaker, saying something about how player 2 had won to give them a round of applause. Gregory let go of the wheel, releasing his breath and flopping limp in his seat. He hurriedly picked at the seatbelt, trying to lift the harness off. And now that he was thinking about it, he was pretty sure that... Something in the oasis erupted towards him in an explosion of scattering water. He caught a glimpse of the long, jagged maw of a mechanical gator unhinging to grab him. Before he even had time to scream, both Gregory and the cart were dragged underwater. The pond devoured him, flooding down his throat as he tried to cry out for Freddy, a flurry of bubbles rushing up past him instead. He tried to flail away from the depths, but he was still strapped down into the heavy cart as it sank. The horrible metal claws of the animatronic clamped down onto his little body, his fingers and hair and clothes caught in the tiny breaks in the robot shell, yanking him down painfully by those delicate points away from the surface. The cart itself tipped, and then flipped over in the water, cutting off view of the silvery surface in an instant. Gregory's head was forced upside down, his jaw banging against the place of the animatronic's face. It didn't even seem to notice his feeble protest, gravity lurching all the wrong directions as the weight of the cart was shifted above him, on top of him, on top of him. No, he couldn't get the seatbelt off, he was caught, he was stuck, he couldn't breathe, he couldn't. He kicked, he hit, he thrashed. It did nothing. He was helpless against the pinching, sharp machinery that bit into him. The robot would not let go. It wouldn't let go. Down, they sank. Gregory's struggles weakened. His eyes closed. And then, with a powerful swipe from the animatronic's gator tail, they were moving sideways, through a tunnel. Right as Gregory began to lose consciousness, the cart burst upwards into fresh air. Gregory tried to suck in a breath, but all that came was the splashing of water. The cart was being lifted above the surface, with Gregory still strapped in, tilted and jostled by the thing holding him up. Gregory choked in a lungful of water, body spasming wildly, trying and failing to pull up against the restraints. Completely blind in the darkness, Gregory clung to the cart's harness, coughing up water and gulping down air at the same time, even though it stank of sewage. The cart was set down, the sound of screeching metal vibrating through it as it was pushed onto dry land, settling beside other large, heavy objects. The water sloshed around Gregory's ankles, caught in the place where he was seated, splashing up onto him as he kicked out, trying to free himself again. A sound echoed through the chamber, one that made all of his bones turn to ice. The hissing, gurgling noise of a furious reptile. It was accompanied by the wet splats of its feet, streams of water pouring off of its body as it lifted itself far above him. Two pink eyes blazed far too close, scowling at him like burning fireworks in the darkness. The faint light outlined his vicious jaws full of teeth the size of steak knives, the scaly, cracked features curling into a look of rage, prowling closer and closer to him. Gregory tried to get away from the beast, but was still held back by the safety harness. Instead, he just curled up, arms thrown over his head. Any second now, he fully expected for his fangs to close over him and cut his life short. He didn't have a weapon, he didn't have a plan, leaving him completely at the mercy of the thing that had grabbed him. In the dark, shaking and cold, Gregory fought down the urge to cry for Freddy. He wasn't coming to save him this time. He shoved it all down and went still, not sure exactly what he was expecting to happen, just knowing that his only chance might be to keep quiet. If these things were chipped to capture children, crying was probably just going to draw more attention to himself. A fleeting hope shot through him. Maybe if the animatronic thought that he was already dead, he wouldn't continue hurting him. So, Gregory snapped his mouth shut, breath shooting in and out of his stinging nose, lying limp like a possum in headlights. For a few minutes, there was no sign that the gator had ever existed. The darkness pressed in from beyond his eyelids, fighting against the shivers that were trying to overtake his chilled skin, feeling his clothes sticking to him, the harness squeezing him against the chair, the frantic fluttering of his heartbeat. But he resisted every urge he had to scream, his mind racing as he tried and failed to think of some way to destroy this animatronic. His vision was black. He could hear the echoed lapping of the water in the enclosed space, the slight scraping noise as the animatronic moved, the air around him freezing him down to his bones. And then that temperature was interrupted by a warm breath that washed over him, smelling like chlorine. He was suddenly painfully aware of the tiny whirs and clicks of the animatronic. He was far too close, only about 2 feet away from him, the hot pink light shining through Gregory's closed eyelids. The metal gator was watching him, just watching. It took all of his willpower to not react to that, to stay motionless. And then he touched him. Absolute splitting terror rocketed through Gregory's body as he felt the metal claw poke him in the chest. He lost his self-control for just a moment, whimpering and thrashing as he tried to get out, and that was all the animatronic needed to know that it was just an act. Gregory's eyes flew open, staring directly into the gator's brightly glowing gaze, before slamming shut again and bracing for it. This was it. Any second now, and Gregory would be gone. Still, though, Monty didn't act. Gregory peeked up at him, growing more and more confused the longer that he stayed alive. The echoes of this place closed in, the smell reminding him of public pools. The scrabbling of various insects skittered away from them. A huge cockroach buzzed right over his head, making him instinctively flinch back. His eyes were beginning to adjust to the darkness. Of course, he didn't have to see the alligator's outline to know who it was. Monty reached towards him with his curved claws, and again, Gregory shrieked in fear. But his claws sank into the harness, not his flesh. With a tug, he wrenched it up, finally freeing Gregory from its hold. Gregory undid the seatbelt and immediately fell off the side of the cart. His elbows and knees scraped up against damp concrete, the existing injuries stinging bright again. His foot's bandages were soaked and ripped up now, the cuts below them overcome with fiery pain. He tucked the foot near as he turned, looking up at Monty's shadowy figure. In the dark, Gregory could only catch a vague glimpse of him, and what he saw only frightened him further. The gator stood tall, made of sharp angles and lean points in a streamlined form. There were several points where his accessories glinted menacingly in the low light, catching his attention. A star-shaped belt buckle clung snugly to him, the studded bands around his wrists and tail clicking against the wet pavement. He had some sort of tight leather necklace with a gold pendant in the middle, wrapped around his slender neck. Out of his bottom lip, a gold fang jabbed out, reminding him of how many more he had hiding away. But he wasn't attacking. Why hadn't he killed him already? Something was wrong. Something was different. They just stayed like that for a while. Monty's mouth kept on creaking open and then locking closed, slow and tight, like he was debating on how exactly he should finish him off. Gregory wanted to say something, to ask what he was waiting for, to tell him just to get it over with, but his voice just wouldn't come to him. The sight of Monty's unblinking, forward-facing eyes staring at him through the darkness activated some primal instinct that told him a predator was inches away from ending his life, that he was literally staring death in the face. Nauseating terror rippled upwards through his body, his heartbeat quickening frantically as his fight-or-flight response demanded that he do something, anything. Then, with no warning, Monty turned and plunged down into the water with a huge splash. Gregory coughed, spitting out more sewer water, somehow getting even more soaked than he was already, his cuts surging with another bright wave of pain. Monty's head was bobbing at the surface whenever he rubbed his vision clear, only a snout and eyes visible above the water, the rest of him hidden in rippling shadows. Monty's claws latched onto the edge of the concrete, pulling his narrow head up out of the water and lying it beside Gregory, blinking up at him. When Monty began to open his mouth, Gregory braced for it, closing his eyes. The pain didn't come. He looked again. Involuntary shudders racked his spine. Monty's jaws were wide open, his chin resting on the floor and his nostrils pointed upwards at an angle. Each individual tooth glinted with the light of his eyes as water dripped off of the points, holding that position. Gregory wasn't sure exactly what he was doing. Monty only shifted his mouth again so that he could speak. "Get the chip out," Monty told him, his voice gritty and low. "Unless you'd like me to kill you." Monty held his mouth open again, going still. Adrenaline began to kick back in as he stared at the open maw, heart ramming against his lungs with each beat. He didn't even want to think about what Monty wanted him to do. Where? He squeaked, bewildered that he was even being asked to do this. Monty pointed inside of his mouth to the back of his throat. There, Gregory could see it. It was the same mechanism that had been inside of Freddy, though Gregory had only seen it from the inside until now. A cylindrical white capsule, too far back and too small for Monty to reach with his own massive talons. No, I can't, he began to stammer. Now! Monty's roar frightened him so bad he fell back, scooting away. Still, the gator hadn't lunged at him. He was still holding his mouth open when Gregory looked back, waiting. Gregory had no time to question it. Whether it was some sort of strange trick or not didn't matter. Hating every part of this, Gregory nodded, inching up towards him, the urgency in Monty's eyes shaking him to his core. Every part of him didn't want to get any closer to those horrible teeth, but he forced himself to anyway. He tapped one of the large fangs and then snatched his hand back, testing it. Monty still didn't move, but he didn't give any reassurances either. The fact that Monty wasn't attacking him right now had to mean that the chip was malfunctioning. How, he didn't know, and he also didn't know how long this would last. He had no choice. He was scared that if he didn't comply, Monty would give up on this idea. So Gregory said his prayers and reached right into his mouth with his non-dominant hand, keeping his head up and out of danger for now. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to stop, to get out of there, sending a disgusted shudder up his spine. He felt around, every inch of the arm at risk, tingling with more and more panic every moment that he spent like this. He couldn't reach it like this, he realized with dread. Gregory took a moment to collect himself, shaking so hard he could hardly breathe. He had to get his head in to reach it. He closed his eyes, taking in several trembling breaths, gathering his courage. Don't think about it, just do it already. Gregory leaned down and forced his head inside. His arm bent at the elbow, reaching down the throat, finally touching the tiny capsule that he had seen on Freddy's throat before. His head was lodged sideways, Monty's sharp teeth jabbing on his left and right ear, pressing down on both sides, neck cramped up at an unnatural angle. Almost, just a little longer. Working as fast as he could, Gregory popped it open, feeling for the right chip, Monty's teeth growing tighter. He found the one separated from the rest, pulling. His fingers slipped. They were still wet. He tried again, heart fluttering, unable to get a good hold on it, his pulse beginning to choke him the longer that he was here, shoved into the tiny space. Monty tried to say something, but the sudden movement of the jaws made Gregory cry out in terror, head throbbing between the two lines of teeth, squeezed and stuck. Instead, Monty lashed his tail, sending a wave onto the concrete beside them, giving up on the idea of speaking. Gregory readjusted, shaking so hard that it was surely making it worse. Holding his breath, he clamped his fingernails into the ridges of the chip and yanked as hard as he could. Finally, with a wave of relief, it popped out of its slot. Monty's entire body jerked whenever he did that, jaw tightening around Gregory's head. Repulsion shivered through every vein in his body, jump-starting him into action. Gregory was out of Monty's mouth before the animatronic system even had time to process the disconnection. Gregory fell back against the wet concrete, gasping, the slimy chip pinched tight in his hand. Monty went limp and fell back beneath the surface of the water, disappearing into the darkness. Gregory stared at the rippling surface, unsure what to do, until Monty's head burst back up to the surface again, nearly giving him a heart attack. Monty dug his claws into the concrete and dragged the rest of himself back out of the water with one heave, coming down with another splash of water that pooled beneath him as he shook himself off. He worked his jaw, eyes lighting up with interest whenever he saw what Gregory now had in his hands. He reached down, taking it from him without asking. So that's why it didn't work, he said, holding it closer to his eyes. The seal didn't dry. What? Gregory squeaked, still catching up with all of this. What do you mean? What is going on? A lot of stuff. Monty sighed. Since Monty had barely spoken a word to him at first, Gregory was quite taken aback as he started to ramble. But it's all making more sense now that that thing's out of me. You're really lucky that thing is malfunctioning. It's been going on and off for a while and literally no one believes me. What? Gregory was beginning to reach his information overload, but he didn't have any time to catch up before Monty kept going. But besides all that...
Okay, what kind of idiot continues to race after watching all 5 of the other cars go under the water?
Gregory jumped back, but Monty still didn't attack him, continuing with,
Look, you can't really blame me for this, alright? I tried to get you to leave, but you just kept on going, and now we're here.
He paused, his expression changing to one of doubt. Then again, I'm kinda glad you didn't leave, since you actually helped me, but now that I'm helped, I guess I should go back to kicking you out.
What?
Gregory tried, but Monty already grabbed him by the back of his shirt, stuffing him underneath one of his arms like a potato sack.
Time to go, little guy,
Monty said, stomping along the concrete shore of the sewers, approaching something else ahead.
You had your fun, now it's time to go home to your mama.
The shadows were obstructed by the thing that Monty was approaching. It was a great hole, crisscrossed by metal grates, the sewer water stopping at a wall that looked like a dam, the real world spilling out far away from them. The grate wasn't large enough for Monty to get through, but it looked like Gregory could fit between the rusted bars if he was determined enough. Only now did he connect what Monty had said to the view outside. Wait, Gregory croaked, more disoriented by the moment. How did you know about Vanessa's chip? Monty stopped in his tracks. His head snapped back around.
What'd you say?
Gregory recoiled, worried that he said something wrong. I'm sorry, sir. He lowered his gaze.
No, you said...
Monty buffered for a moment, blinking at him. Oh, wait. The chip really was from Vanessa? I'm not just losing my mind? Gregory felt like he was missing something. Yeah, it happened to Moon and Chica and Roxy. Vanessa chipped them. They attacked me. Monty looked like he might crash. Eventually, Monty stepped away from the grate. He dropped Gregory on the damp concrete, towering above him. His silhouette stood out starkly in the dull light, the sharp angles stabbing out of his lithe figure. His firework eyes narrowed, watching him. Still, though, he didn't attack. But what is going on? Gregory asked, becoming desperate. It's kind of a long story. I should really try and get you out of here, Monty said slowly, but that just pushed Gregory over the edge. Something snapped in him, completely overloaded with confusion and terror, absolutely refusing to be pushed any further. Monty reached towards him, but Gregory leaped back, fiercely stamping his sodden shoe against the cold stone. No, it's not a long story, Gregory yelled, completely fed up with the ridiculousness of the situation. You dragged me underwater and made me stick my head into your mouth, and I didn't question it. Since you apparently know something about what's going on, you better explain, quick. I'm not going anywhere with you. Monty tilted his head back and forth a few times, seeming to consider it. Gregory was quivering with adrenaline, his brain feeling like it was still stuck at the racetrack. So much stuff had just happened to him, flashing by like speeding cars on a highway, and he was frankly getting a little dizzy from how fast things were moving now. He had to slow down, he had to think, he had to get answers. When Monty didn't look like he would start on his own, Gregory said, So, even though you had a chip, you didn't kill me. How did you do that? You at least owe me an explanation as to why I'm not dead right now. Monty started chewing on his gold tooth, still not saying anything, eyes staring at an unspecified spot on the ceiling. So, are you just gonna kill me anyway? Gregory challenged, just to poke a reaction out of him. Are you on Vanessa's side? How else would you know about the chips? I'm just gonna keep on guessing until you say something. Are you working with her? The wild accusations seemed to dig into Monty in a way that Gregory hadn't anticipated.
No, I'm not killing you, and I'm certainly not with Vanessa.
Monty snarled, switching to fury in a matter of moments. Geez, I'm not that mean. Okay, what's happening then? Gregory demanded. I am freaked out of my mind right now. Can you please at least take some time to... Okay, I will, Monty said, flapping his hands around to try and pacify him. Calm down, kid. I'm just trying to think of what words to use. I'm not good at talking. Gregory wanted to up the tension, but was humbled by the reminder of who exactly he was facing down. Freddy's warning passed him again. Pushing any further could cause several 100 pounds of mechanical gator to come crashing down onto him anyway, his lack of a chip be damned. So, he kept his mouth shut, waiting in silence. In that time, he continued passing his eyes up and down the gator's body, around the rippling scales, the sharp firework eyes, the jagged teeth stabbing out of pink gums, the way his tail was curled around one of his ankles, the way he brushed back strands of wet hair from his face. He didn't have the same madness that Moon, Chica, and Roxy had. No trace of the compulsive, unreasonable insanity. He was holding himself calmly, rubbing his front talons together, still blinking up at the ceiling in crinkled thought. He was coherent. He was like Freddy, Gregory realized. More than just a mindless animal. So he gave him time, sitting back and waiting, listening to the lapping of the water against the concrete slab that they were currently beached on. Gregory's newfound aggression would not solve this situation any faster. When he was ready, Monty swung his feet into the sewer water, plopping down to sit on the edge, thin tail curling close to him.
Okay, look. Something strange happened with Vanessa a while back,
He explained, finally addressing Gregory's confusion.
She did something to me during a maintenance check. She added this to my chips. And she acted all weird whenever I woke up. She told me not to go into the water until tomorrow, or the chip wouldn't start working the next day.
He rubbed the back of his neck, tail flicking a few droplets off. And, I chose to not listen to her. As if Gregory had protested, Monty threw his arms up into the air, arguing,
Look, she'd been very rude about it, okay? And it was good I didn't listen to her anyway, otherwise you'd be dead, so yeah, I did the right thing. On purpose! Ha!
Gregory drew back, holding his hands up in submission.
Okay. Anyway,
Monty dropped his arms, continuing with,
I guess that's why the chip didn't work. I didn't give the waterproof coating time to dry. Which was a good thing. I knew I couldn't trust her. I knew that she was up to something.
The gator squared his shoulders, triumph swelling in his chest.
I was right, you hear that?
He yelled at the ceiling.
I was right, you jerks!
The silence deadpanned in response. Wait, what? Gregory piped up, catching his attention again. What are you talking about? Did you know about what Vanessa's been doing?
Wait, so Vanessa tried to get me to kill you?
Monty asked, ignoring his question.
Wait, how do you know all this? What's your deal?
Well, Gregory had a hard time adjusting to all this, 100 questions swirling about in his head. Eventually, he narrowed it down to, It's a long story. I got lost and got trapped here after closing. I saw Vanessa coming, so I hid inside Freddy's riding compartment. While I was there, I saw her plug a chip into him. When I took it out, Freddy said that it was bad. He pointed to Monty's chip, which still had a bit of clear, gooey substance sticking to it. This is the same one, he said. She put these in Moon, Chica, and Roxy too. It made them want to attack me and do whatever Vanessa says. Huh. Monty turned his gaze back to the water swirling around his feet. The gator grew silent, something that was somehow just as disturbing as his outbursts. Just as Gregory opened his mouth, Monty interrupted.
You should still leave, though.
What?
That's what I was originally doing, I forgot,
Monty said, getting up out of the water and reaching to Gregory.
Here, you gotta get out of this place, especially if Moon, Chica, and Roxy are in murder mode. This place for kids is not a safe place for kids.
Wait, I can't go yet, Gregory yelped, darting out of his reach.
Yes, you can,
Monty contradicted, advancing on him.
Here, I'll show you.
Wait, but no, I don't want to leave anymore. Gregory protested, the truth pressing up behind his mouth without warning.
James needs me! He's going to die without me!
Monty drew back, blinking down at him.
Who?
Gregory's brain began to hurt.
Never mind,
he stammered at first.
Why are you here?
I already told you. I got lost, Gregory said stiffly. He tried to keep his expression still, but it didn't seem to be working very well. I don't have to tell you everything. It's none of your business, Gregory said, folding his arms across his chest. Again, Monty didn't say anything, making him even more uncomfortable. What do you want from me? Gregory said, unable to stand it. Well, I want to know what's going on, Monty said slowly. If there's another kid stuck in here, I gotta know so I can go after him too and get him through the bars. He pointed to the thick, rusty metal separating them from the rest of the world. Gregory hated how much sense that made. Can you at least tell me why you're here? Monty asked. Why'd you stay after closing? Why hasn't your mama realized you weren't in the back seat on the drive home? Gregory felt himself lock up at the mention of his mother. No way. Out of everything, he wasn't going to tell him about that. Did you just want to play the games while no one else is here? Sneak a few extra cookies? Monty pressed. Seriously, I want to know. Did you two just hide from your mama because you didn't want to leave? No, I never wanted to go into this hellhole in the first place, Gregory burst out like a volcanic eruption. The whole reason James is gone is because I was too scared to follow him. His voice cracked sharply off the concrete walls, making Monty shrink back, the swirling water going still around his tail. It maintained that quiet for a few more seconds, and even though Gregory was soaked from head to toe in cold chlorine, he felt like heat was radiating from his bones and melting his skin. He turned away from Monty, rubbing at his stinging eyes in a disoriented frustration. The tears that he had been holding back the entire night were too heavy to hide any longer. Why did he say that, he wondered. Because he needed to. He needed it, even though he hadn't known it until now. Gregory hugged his arms close, the dim lighting in the tunnel becoming distorted through his watery eyes. He had to say it, not just to exchange information. Confessing to this was his punishment. He had been an awful kid, and now he had to say it. We ran away, Gregory said, his body growing even more numb as his mind drifted back to only a few days prior. We were hungry and cold. James wanted to sneak into this place. He thought that we could just live here in secret. And his voice hitched to a stop. And I was too scared, Gregory said, the words grinding against his raw throat. I've always been scared of you guys, the animatronics. You've terrified me so much for the longest time, and I don't really know why. He sniffled, giving a sour laugh. I know it sounds stupid, but it was enough. James wanted to be brave for me, and told me that he would go in first to check it out and stuff, and tell me if it was safe or not. So I stayed behind, he concluded emptily. I haven't seen him since. The guilt sank heavier and heavier inside of him, like he was swallowing bricks. He kept his blurry gaze firmly on the bars, watching as a cockroach or two scuttled outside and disappeared among the reeds. The sound of rippling water came to him as Monty's tail twitched, the pink light of his eyes reflecting off the shimmering surface. There, you happy? You got everything you wanted to hear? Gregory challenged. I'm sorry, the gator said eventually.
I was too loud, right? I'm not good with this.
When I first got locked in here, I just wanted to get out, Gregory explained, wanting to move on as fast as possible. Freddie had the chip. He said that he would give it to the police once morning came, so I thought I was done here. I was just trying to hide from Vanessa until morning, but then I found out that Vanessa was the one who made the chips, and she has a whole rabbit suit that robots can't see her in, and... He shook his head, looking back up to the mechanical reptile. Freddie has been helping me avoid her, he said. We've been running through all the games so I can get out, but now me and Freddie are the only ones who know about Vanessa. I can't just leave anymore. I don't think my brother can wait until morning for help. It might be too late. If we don't stop Vanessa right now... Monty opened and closed his mouth, turning away, picking at the studded bands around his wrists. His eyes stayed on the water rushing past them. Each ripple bore a little dash of gray light from outside the grate, the dam keeping the chemicals away from what was left of nature. I can't go up there, Monty said. With that one sentence, Monty had shriveled up, tail wrapping tight around his legs. They'd never believe me, Monty said, voice low and stiff. They love Vanessa. I've tried to tell them about her being suspicious before. What do you mean? Gregory asked. We have plenty of proof. Freddie's still doubtful, but after this, we have 2 witnesses of what she's done. There's no way that he'd... No, I'm not going up there, Monty said firmly. But we have to do something, Gregory said, voice edging into a desperate peak. Please, Monty, we have to... Look, it doesn't matter, Monty snapped, taking a stomp towards him. They hate me, okay? Gregory recoiled with a yelp, covering his head. Monty hit his teeth, the angry snarl dropping into shame. He leaned back from him, keeping his claws tucked away on his chest. Even if I tried to help, they'd think I'm leading them into a trap, Monty told him, voice creaking as he repeated. They hate me. He reached up and touched the left side of his face, then hurriedly put the hand down, shifting uncomfortably. But, Monty, that doesn't matter, Gregory said, determined. So what if they hate you? This is about more than just grudges. This is the life of my brother we're talking about. Monty looked down at him, curling his talons closer. But, please, Gregory begged, pain digging deeper and deeper into his chest. Please, Monty, take me back to Freddie. We have to find Vanessa. If he hates you the whole way, fine. This is more important than that. Whether you like it or not, you need to work with Freddie, for James's sake. Monty's gaze trailed away. He fiddled with the spiked bands on his tail. Then, finally, he shook his head, snapping out of it. I'm sorry. You're right, he decided, setting his jaw. We need to get you back up there. Yes, Gregory nodded, hurrying up to him. Thank you. Are you sure you don't want to leave? He asked. Gregory took one more glance to the grate. The outside world was right there. He could feel the breeze beckoning to him. Not without my big brother, Gregory told him. All right, then, Monty said. He plunged into the water, lifting his shoulders up, gesturing for Gregory to climb on. Hold your nose and hang on tight. And so, they were off. Gregory latched himself into place, digging his fingers between Monty's scales. He took in a deep, filling breath and gave Monty a thumbs up. They dove below the surface together. Immediately, fear tried to kick its way out of his chest, the freezing water cruel against his goosebump rough skin. He closed his eyes, clinging on so tight that his fingers hurt. His various cuts stung in the water, the sharpest pinpoints being on his knee, face, and foot, but he kept a hold with all of his might. With 2 powerful swipes of his tail, they were onto the tunnel that they had come through. Bubbles swirled all around him, the cold water sweeping past him like the winds of a hurricane, trying to rip him off of Monty's back. Gregory's lungs began to burn and ache. He clenched his teeth tight, centering himself around his frantic heartbeat. Just a little further, he could make it. He had made it down here screaming the whole way before. Monty kicked up from the bottom of the pond and rose. Silvery light chased the darkness away, bubbles escorting them up, up, up. Gregory was just beginning to lose his hold whenever they burst to the surface together. Gravity yanked down on him, hair plastered to his face as he coughed and gasped, shivering violently once more. Monty rose out of the water, heaving himself up onto land, his back shifting unsteadily beneath Gregory's hands. Monty crouched down on the ground, leaning so Gregory slid off his back and down his tail, falling heavily on his hands and knees in the fake brown grass. With more light, Monty's colors were easier to distinguish. Soft green and orange scales plaited over his body, his bright pink frill of hair now dragged down in sopping clumps along his long neck. He wore a leather vest and pants that connected to the western theme all around him. Monty was much scarier whenever he had been floating in a vat of dark water with only his glowing eyes visible in the sharp gator face. He straightened up slowly, glancing around with wrinkling brows at his raceway. It was still as quiet as Gregory had left it, minus the 6 carts. Nothing had changed in the dusty town, shadows deep and iron glinting in the moonlight. Gregory pulled himself to his feet, limping on the stinging leg, off towards the exit. He stopped after a few steps, glancing back at Monty. He hadn't moved. Freddy is basically like a big, goofy teddy bear, Gregory said. You don't have to be scared.
But I'm not scared.
Monty scoffed, tail lashing indignantly.
I'm just... There's... Look,
He trailed off, then shook himself, marching on ahead.
Keep up, little guy.
Okay. Gregory grinned, hurrying to follow him, evading the various cacti and plastic rattlesnakes scattered about the place. They approached the doors, pushing their way through, Monty plowing on ahead. Gregory clanged right into Monty's leg, floundering back. Again. His nose was bleeding, yet again. Rubbing his throbbing face, he peeked around the animatronic's scaly leg. What are you... Something was wrong. Freddy wasn't there. In his place was a large splatter of neon purple paint. The paint casted all over the floor, the bucket that it had come from rolling on its side. Out of the messy puddle emerged 2 sets of paw prints, one large and the other narrow. Both of them circled around to the right, disappearing out of view. Gregory didn't have time to question what had happened here, because 3 new figures were standing there in place of Freddy. One was shining new, but the other 2 were beaten and broken, full of cracks and stains. It was Moon, Chica, and Roxy. You did this, Moon hissed, dilated eyes burning through Gregory's. I knew you were with Afton. Incident reports. On March 23, 2082, after a normal run of the Showtime performance, DJ decided to stay on stage rather than go down to parts and services like the other members of the band. He started to play a song of his own creation, the contents of which were entirely immature and meant to insult the new managers and Jeremy Miller as much as possible. The crowd was excited and riled up, seeming to think that it was part of the show, and even after employees were sent up on stage to corral him into parts and services, DJ continued with the song until the collar was used and the microphone was forcefully taken from him. DJ still didn't seem to realize the seriousness of what he had done, even once taken down to his maintenance room. His manager interrogated him about it, but DJ made it clear that he meant what he said, seemed to think that it was hilarious, and was not planning on apologizing anytime soon. DJ showed complete disrespect to his new boss and even began to argue with his new manager until they began to discipline him properly. Assessment. We made an example of him. The headphones have been melded to his head and his voice box has been removed. DJ will no longer speak. Make it clear to the others that I will not be as lenient as my father was. Jeremy Miller. Patch requests. Parents are concerned about the safety of the new Monty's Raceway attraction. They say that it's too dangerous and looks like it was rushed to put together. Add more safety precautions. Chica has continued to sneakily eat an expensive amount of food. Continue disciplining her until she understands the finality of my decision. Roxy has been getting more aggressive during arena matches and has made 3 more children cry this week, leading to several angry parents practically bashing down my door. Keep track of this misbehavior and discipline immediately when it happens. The Sundrop and Moondrop candies will be passed out in the daycare regularly. Sorry about my pitiful attempts at a southern accent. I tried my best and I can't tell if it sounds okay or not. So we are about to pass the point in the rewrite where things start to get insane, so just be ready for that. The next episode is ready to be released on next Friday, so, look out for it next week. That's it. Thanks for watching. Bye!